What's up, guys? Dan here for BladeReviews.com, and today I am very pleased to present you with my review, the Zero Tolerance 0560. This is the new collaboration between Rick Hinderer and Zero Tolerance Knives. Quite excited to share this review with you, and it might run a little bit long because there's just a ton of ground to cover, a lot of interesting details that I'd like to have the opportunity to discuss with you. In the event that you're actually interested in this knife and are contemplating a purchase, I want to give you as much info as I can. So with that said, let's get started, do some quick specs, and then dive into some of the more interesting topics that this knife has to offer. So overall length on the 560 is 8.8 inches. We've got a 3 3/4 inch long blade and a weight here of 5.8 ounces. So it's a big knife, but still it's quite lightweight. Let's do some size comparisons. I first want to show you my ZT 0550, and I actually did a more detailed comparison between the 560 and the 550, so feel free to check that out. But the 550 here weighs the same as the 560, so it's just to give you an idea as to the size and weight. Here is a Spyderco Paramilitary 2, and you can see 560 is much bigger. And then finally I've got a Benchmade Griptilian, and again, you know, just goes to show how big of a knife we're talking about here. The 560 is quite large, but in hand it's extremely nimble. It's really incredible, considering that you've got an almost 9-inch long knife here, and it really does not feel like it. It feels like a much smaller knife in terms of weight, at least. So let's take a closer look at the blade here, and what we've got is a modified drop point design. We've got a large sort of swedge that it doesn't quite run all the way across the top of the blade, but a good portion of the blade. You've got a high flat grind. You've got a long and curving edge here, good amount of belly. The knife is made of, or the blade is made of 4mm thick blade stock. So what that does here is it gives you actually a very nice tip, the way they've designed this knife. And if you actually run your fingers across the blade, it thickens. The blade actually thickens a bit right around here, and then it thins back out towards the tip. So it's been reinforced for a little bit extra tip strength, and you're going to be able to get a lot of work done with this one. I've been carrying this as my daily carry for the past two to 3 weeks now, really trying to get a feel for it. And for my kind of use, which is admittedly just more pedestrian EDC tasks, it's been cutting really well. It's actually a pretty good slicer for such a thick blade. They put a nice thin sort of grind on it. Feels like it's a little bit thinner than my 550, although I don't have a micrometer or anything, but the geometry is pretty well balanced, I think, for EDC and then harder kind of use tasks. And they gave this a pretty fine stone-washed blade finish, and then of course they've got their typical laser etched insignia and information on the blade. All right, let's talk a little bit about the steel. And ZT and Mr. Hinderer, they selected L-Max for this blade steel, and L-Max is a pretty interesting steel, actually. I do not have much experience with it, so I was excited to get the opportunity to kind of get up to speed, and then I also did a bunch of research. And according to Bowler, they designed this steel for manufacturing electronics and then also for the food processing industry, like commercial and industrial sort of applications. And they said for those two kinds of industries or tasks or what have you, the things that they were really interested in for a tool steel, was to develop something that was corrosion resistant but very tough, and then also had great durability, great edge holding properties. So that's kind of what they were going for here. This is a high chromium steel with a bunch of other stuff in there, and it's quite exotic. In practice, I think it's an excellent blade steel from what I can tell, and then you know, also from my research. Now, Bowler, they recommend for best performance, heat treat this to 58 to 60 HRC. According to the folks over at ZT, this thing is right around 60, so it should be quite good, and so far it has. So what would I expect from the edge retention performance of this kind of steel, well, you're not going to expect something like S90V or M390, but it should be an appreciable step up from S30V, which is already a great steel. So you're looking at a nice exotic steel here. Should perform really well, and I look forward to getting a little more experience with it. All right, let's talk a little bit about the handles on this, and I'll tell you, the handles are incredible. Zero Tolerance has raised the bar once again with their machining and their handle construction. The 560 is just phenomenal. Everything has been 3D machined, so you can see it's got some curvature, it's got some depth. It's not just a cookie cutter handle scale here. What they've done is actually machined every surface of it, and just phenomenal. Underneath that G10 scale, you've got a highly milled out full stainless steel liner, and you can see they really went to great lengths to lighten this up. And I'll tell you, everything fits together so well. Let me show you my 550, which I thought had excellent fit and finish, but I'll point out a couple details for you on the 550. You can maybe notice on the 550, there's some machining marks here. There's some like maybe laser etching or excuse me, laser cutting marks, and you can maybe see those again down here. You know, these are very minor details, and it's not something that would detract from a $200 production knife like this at all. But by point of comparison, take a close look at the 560 here. There is none of that, no machining marks on this on any surface at all, that I can see at least. And so they've really refined their manufacturing and their assembly of these knives. It's just incredible. And of course, on the other side here, what we have is a full titanium frame lock. So a full titanium handle slab, and then a frame lock, and then that has also been 3D machined, just beautifully done. Let me show you the inside here, where they've actually cut out some pockets, some weight relief pockets, what they're calling this, and that is just outstanding. So that's really what helps get this knife at 5.8 ounces for such a big knife with a full titanium lock bar on there. That's wild. So really impressed. And let me show you what the knife looks like closed, and you can see that they did a very fine line for cutting out this lock bar. Compare that with, say, the 550 again. Let me get this one for you. You can see, that's got a much thicker, you can just see, they've totally kicked it up a notch. And the 550 is a great knife, but the 560 is really a triumph of American knife manufacturing. Dare I even say it, from a production knife. It's absolutely wild. So I'm a huge fan of the handle here. Beautifully done. Let's talk a little bit about the ergonomics, and the ergonomics are, again, I think they're outstanding. I mean, they're quite aggressive. The jimping here on the top is aggressive. There's aggressive jimping down here in the finger choil, and it really does lock your fingers in place. I know some people, I watched some other reviews, read some other thoughts. For some, the ergonomics were a little too aggressive. They felt like the knife was a little uncomfortable, and I can see there's definitely some slightly sharp corners in here. Nothing too bad, really, to be honest with you, at least the way I feel, at least. And again, the handles are a little bit thinned out. For part of that 3D machining, they wanted to sort of have them curve in and bevel a little bit. So, if you really grip on it, yeah, so some slight hot spots might develop a little bit. Actually, I still think it's pretty comfortable, but it's definitely a more aggressive handle design than, say, something like this fat Griptilian, which is extremely comfortable, but still, I think it's quite nice. It's nothing that would detract, take away from this knife, at least for me. I don't mind the aggressive ergonomics for what I tend to do. So there you go. That's my take, at least. The pocket clip's quite nice. They've definitely upgraded this over the more traditional ZT clip. It's a deep carry clip. It is quite simple, kind of elegant looking, and very nice. It's got great retention, and it will definitely hold the knife firmly in place, and that is what I'm looking for in a pocket clip. I don't want it sliding around in my pocket a lot. I want it to just put the knife exactly where I feel like it needs to go, and then just leave it there, and that's what this clip does. So it's phenomenal. And the way this knife carries is just excellent. For a big knife like this, it's quite thin actually, so I don't really notice it in my pocket, and I just wear kind of lightweight shorts. I'm a student and it's Florida, so it's quite hot over here, and I wear a lot of shorts, and the ZT, you know, it's performing very well as far as an everyday carry knife. For a knife that usually I don't carry anything this big, but the 560, not a problem at all for me. So quite impressed. All right, let's talk a little bit about the deployment. And there's a lot to talk about with the deployment here. So what we have are a flipper. What we have here is a flipper, and then we also have some thumb studs, and then we have something known as KVT, or Kershaw Velocity Technology. That is their system of bearings and washers here. So instead of a more traditional phosphor bronze washer or Teflon washer, they actually have some bearings and a plastic cup. So what this means is it's just incredibly smooth. The KVT is very nice. This is my first experience with it, and the knife is just effortless to open. You know, just putting a little pressure there and the thing just flies open. It's quite nice. Now, one thing I want to talk about with these thumb studs, and you'll notice I'm left-handed, so I'm using my left hand to open the knife, and I'm having no problems at all with deploying the knife via the thumb studs, but some right-handed people have had issues with it, and that is because apparently when you put a lot of pressure on this lock bar and then try to open the knife, you run into issues. And you know, I'm not right-handed, so I didn't really even think of that, but that's what some people are reporting. And you know, I'm not having major problems deploying this with my right hand, but I admit the thumb studs with the right hand, probably not your best course of action. You're probably going to want to use this flipper. So if that's something that is potentially a deal breaker for you, well, I just want to let you know. But I am able to open it with my right hand too. Just takes a little practice. You want to keep your fingers off that lock bar, I guess, is the main thing. So, but the KVT, incredibly smooth, incredibly fast, and just so easy to get this thing open. It's awesome. So let's talk briefly about the lockup here, and what we have is a titanium frame lock. It engages early to mid lockup here. It's actually very solid, quite nice. I've got no blade play at all on this knife. I'm very pleased with it, and the lock does not stick at all. So just like on my 550, just a phenomenal lockup, and very, very easy. And I also find it's very easy to disengage this with my thumb. So no problems at all for me. The final thing I guess I'll talk about is this Hinderer lock bar stabilizer, and of course, if you're familiar with the 550 and Rick Hinderer's knives, that's just to prevent the lock bar from overextending and perhaps compromising your lockup. So there you have it, guys. That's my review, the ZT 0560. Final thoughts, man, what a phenomenal knife. I am super impressed. I love pretty much everything about it. Materials, fit and finish, just the design. It's a very cool looking knife. I love that KVT, Kershaw Velocity Technology. That stuff's just nuts. The blade just slides right out almost effortlessly, and it carries like a dream. You know, this is a knife that I could definitely see myself EDCing. I don't typically go for such a big blade, but you know, why not when it carries like a smaller knife? So there you have it, folks. That's my review. Totally recommend the ZT 0560. It's not a cheap knife. You're looking to pay like around $250, $260. But if you're into the higher end stuff, I think it's definitely worth considering. So there you have it. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, this is Dan for BladeReviews.com. As always, let me know if you have any comments or questions. And just take care, guys. Take care. Be safe. I'll be back soon with another knife review.